Now that leads me to the big question of the day. Should the USL follow suit? They are the other big soccer entity, professional soccer entity in this country. They're taking on some big things like promotion, relegation, adding a first division. But with this change with MLS, should USL follow suit with MLS's calendar change? Dan?
Boy, just a light question, huh? Just an easy yes or no. Yeah, definitely. No, I think that there's a lot going on here, and it's bigger than just USL and how they fit into the overall soccer landscape in the United States. I think that there's a lot of reasons why MLS made that jump. When it comes to alignment with other pro leagues in the world and how that affects transfers, totally get that. The problem is, and I'm not the first person to say this, obviously, is that the weather in the United States during the winter can be pretty extreme in comparison to a lot of those European leagues in more temperate climates. And so because of that, there's the challenge. I mean, you see that all the time, the pictures of the snow games with snow covering the field and players out there running. That's not the most fun thing in the world. Now, you could say the USL is already testing this on the women's side, right? They've already got the USL Super League, which plays within that same calendar, playing in the fall-spring calendar. They have that break across the darkest parts of the winter in December and January. So there is a test balloon already up in the air for them. I see a couple of things that I guess I definitely think we should talk about or definitely include in this conversation, which is one, the Super League. We follow it. If you listen to our show, the Super Show, we talk about this all the time. But the gap across December and January is complicated for fans to negotiate, and it feels like for teams to negotiate so far. Now, they've only been one so far because they've only played one season. We're coming towards that break already again in season 2. But the challenge is continuing the level of play that you did in the fall part of the season into the spring. And they've struggled with that. A team like Brooklyn FC, which was really great during the fall season, ended the season towards the top, went winless for the second half of the season, without a win the entire second half of the season. They just dropped like a stone. Why that is, I don't know. Maybe there could be other issues going on in the league, but the question is, how do you find continuity across that big gap in the middle of your season, which almost certainly you have to build in to protect your players' health and also, I mean, I don't know how many people want to go see a soccer match and sit in the snow. The second part that I would say is, I find it interesting that USL would even consider this, given how much they've worked to align themselves, both in branding and interconnectivity between between their three leagues. USL obviously has a championship. They're going to launch a Division 1 very soon. There's a USL League 1 underneath of that championship, but there's also a massive, and we've talked about them today, USL League 2 system, which is their amateur system. I get that there's a lot of conversations about changes to amateur soccer and how that's going to play out in college soccer, but we don't really know how they're going to play out just yet. But amateur soccer is built around college players. If you try to change around the format of how USL seasons stack up, it may create a sort of a shift within what USL has done so far, which is basically to try to brand and align their league so it feels like a pyramid. That's on purpose. They've done that on purpose. And USL League 2, though it is amateur, is part of that branding. It's part of that pyramid. If you shift your seasons for all your pro leagues, but you don't for your amateur league, I feel like at least stylistically, at least branding wise, you've created a really significant gap within your system that you've worked so hard to align. And that feels complicated. USL League 2 depends on college soccer players to fill their rosters. You need them. Their free time is in the spring. That's when they can play. And even now, the reason why so many of those amateur leagues have very short seasons is because they lose those college players towards the end of the season. It becomes complicated on to how fill roster going into a playoff spot. So I think there's a lot going on here, Robert. I hope I answered your question with just a lot more questions.
Yeah, questions beget questions for sure, and especially if we're into this world, the MLS calendar shift news is is very new. And so I think that analyzing this from a pros and cons sort of a perspective is good. I mean, zooming out for a second, I mean, both USL and Major League Soccer both announcing huge changes in their structure in the year 2025. USL opening up the first division in the future and the promotion relegation system, and then MLS changing the calendar. All you could argue is a way to capture more soccer eyeballs. You know, I think there's an awareness in the powers that be that there's a lot of soccer fans and not necessarily a lot of domestic soccer fans at the present. So, what is the pros and the cons? What would the potential pros be for the USL to change the Euro calendar? So, I'm also the Women's Super League throws a weird gamut in it. It's like, is that the pilot or an exception to what they're going to do? But so the main pro of the calendar change for Major League Soccer is aligning with the international calendar so they can have more business coming and going. Does that okay? So I guess does that big advantage that MLS is seeking with the international calendar change, with the being able to buy and sell more, does that have enough impact on the USL to be an upside?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's pressure, right, that MLS is putting on USL to make this jump as well. And I think you're right. I think what is interesting is that we're seeing MLS and NWSL react a bit to what they're seeing in USL. I think there's competition. I think they see the USL system as a little bit of a threat, and I think MLS is looking for something to set themselves apart from USL system, particularly with USL coming with a Division One side or Division One league. I think that's what you're seeing this change for. MLS has been sort of calcitrant about this change, had stuck to that calendar for 25 years as a league, being on a different calendar than the rest of the world. Why the change now? It feels obvious. It's because of the pressure from USL. We've seen changes in the NWSL because of what the USL Super League has done as far as how rosters are built and how players can move. That is interesting. And I feel like that's why this change is coming. Does USL follow suit? I don't know. I think that more than likely, I say yes. That's probably what they end up doing because it feels like it's how you become a top tier league, right? This is what all these leagues are looking for, to try to prove that they can hang with the big boys. I don't know that they can just yet, or big girls, obviously. But we'll see. We'll see how this goes.
So okay, so as of now, this is all speculative. USL playing on the traditional calendar makes them a little bit different from Major League Soccer. They will now be the soccer league that is on TV and in the stadiums in the months of June or late June, July, and early August. Is that enough to stick with it? I mean, right up as of now, most internationals that are playing in USL are more on this side of the hemisphere. I mean, obviously there's some exceptions. There's some Europeans there, but most of them are Caribbean or, like I said, this hemisphere. And so that international calendar at the moment isn't super restrictive. And you wouldn't say that USL is so deep in the market that, that's the difference between success and not, is being able to easily transfer players from Europe as of now.
Right.
But
That's what I was
maybe
going to say.
because especially if like the first division gets on its legs, then if the money, and if it is on a first division sort of a commercial level, then you'd think that maybe being on the different calendar might affect them then. But at the same,
by the way, Rob, before I just want to say, can we shout out Chris Huey Cord's comment, which I thought was hilarious? Quickly buy stock in orange balls. That's a great comment right there. We need to see more orange balls, especially in the snow. I saw that. I chuckled to myself. That's a great comment.
Yeah, definitely. And Chris definitely doing his thing in the comments. He's always got something good for us. But I mean, okay, so the pros would essentially be the same things as Major League Soccer, but maybe in the future. But are folks, I mean, the same problems come with that as well. There's the weather problems and everything else. Could there be any more pitfalls? Like, is there greater cons beyond what Major League Soccer might face by going to a European calendar?
I mean, I think that you highlighted the big one, right? Weather is the thing that always concerns, particularly, when you get up on the East Coast or in the Pacific Northwest. I mean, the winters are, man, even in the Midwest, the winters are significant. I do think that as I talked about with the alignment, I think that creates problems for amateur leagues. And while MLS may not care much about amateur soccer, USL, at least on paper, is supposed to care about that. So maybe this is something, maybe there are more mechanisms going on here with the changes that may be coming for college soccer and how that plays a role in this. I'm kind of curious. I would suspect that the people at these table making these decisions probably have more insight and more knowledge than you and I have, unfortunately. And so I definitely feels like that could be something that maybe there's a workaround that's coming, and we just don't know how that works out.
Yeah, I'm curious. I really am curious to see how this this all plays out, and I wonder how it feels in the halls of power at USL. Like, they've been on the forefront as far as like announcements of new things, getting people in different cities excited that soccer might be coming to them, or if they're an amateur
Yep.
team that they might be able to step up to the pro level. And then the the elephant in the room that they're competing with, but not competing with full-throatedly just yet, has done this seismic change. Do you throw like a third giant change into your process here? You'd think that if they did it, you'd think they'd have to hold off until after Pro Rel is like on its feet, you'd think. I'm just kind of spitballing here as to kind of what that would be like. I mean, there's obviously they play through the summer now, same adverse, I guess they're facing the same circumstances as Major League Soccer, but the scale of money coming back and forth and the transfer market isn't quite as, I guess, big. The volume of the numbers isn't as big, so the impact probably won't be as big. It's curious to see how that'll all happen.
Oh, there's a reason why it's the big question, right? Because it is the big question. We don't
It's open-ended
really know.
at this point.
It really is. And all of these leagues are making gambles about the future and trying to predict how things are going to shape out. And when you play in the United States, particularly across the winter, you're competing against the NFL, and that is the big monster that you're competing against when it comes to, as those matches move into the fall, there's people fighting for those TV dollars. MLS is looking for that. Obviously, they've got their deal with Apple, but USL is really expanding out into the professional, the broadcasting market, and hoping to gain a foothold there. Do they become the canary in the coal mine that to test how this works out? I don't know. I think that, like we said, it's a big question. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of moving parts. And let's not forget, they're going to be competing against the other big leagues in the country, which gobble up huge market shares. I definitely think, and I sort of hinted or sort of tossed it towards this, the Super League needs to find you mentioned that potentially they're the test market, and they need to find a way to how they're going to negotiate this big gap in the winter. And I do think that maybe taking an approach like we see in Liga MX, where you actually play a fall and spring season to kind of break those seasons apart and create champions for both, and then play into a final championship. I like that. The problem is it kind of messes up your playoff system. Unless you're going to run a playoff in both halves, which would be, again, really interesting to see how that would work out as far as how it would fit into your calendar and the challenges that would face. But there's a lot going on here. I think there's people smarter than us that are working on this. At least I would hope so.
Yeah, that's where we are for many different issues with Soccer United States. Is fingers crossed that the people in power are putting some work in and having thoughts on this. And I mean, granted, the bar was low, but I was happy to see the white paper for college acknowledging the fact that it's not college soccer world and infrastructure isn't being utilized to its most. So acknowledgement of that. And then I saw some reporting that this calendar change for Major League Soccer was in the works for a long time. And I always thought it was like, if they were ever going to do it at the World Cup year, right?
Right.
Because there's already going to be, a pause in action. But apparently this was in those conversations for a long time, but getting everyone on board took so long that, 2026 wasn't possible for the change. So in those conversations or those back rooms, those boards of power, those tables with the leather chairs going all the way around it, they are aware of the major problems and quirks that throttle or that limit the throttle of American soccer. But
One last point, Rob,
but it's
before we
just
move on.
slow to progress. Go ahead.
I wanted to say, I think there's also one more part of this, which is the CBA that these players play under.
Of course.
Is what role will players have in shaping this future? Does this shift in calendar, how does it impact those negotiations? The risks that they might be taking on playing in cold weather, muscle pulls and danger to your body can become elevated within harsher conditions. And it's certainly something that they should have a say in this, as they're the ones doing the actual work on the field.
Yeah, and last I've been DMing with the USL Players Union, and last update from them, they met last week on Wednesday, and as of whoever is the admin for USL Players online, the ball sits in the league's club's court waiting for responses from them. And I mean, that's a huge part of this whole thing. All of these initiatives that USL is taking on board, you hope that the players get a better seat at the table, for lack of better words.